Welcome to our presentation on what is compliance by Compliance Channel UK. Okay, so we'll get straight into it. What is compliance? We'll start off with an introduction. So we'll be covering what is compliance, the financial regulators in the UK, why do we need compliance, what are the three lines of defence in compliance, how compliance mitigates financial risks, compliance screening techniques used to monitor relationships, why do we need a compliance handbook, what is an MLRO, and last but not least, a summary. So what is compliance? Compliance itself is about implementing controls to protect the organisation from those risks. Compliance monitors and reports on the effectiveness of controls in the management of organisations in relation to risk exposure. So the financial regulators in the UK are the FCA. The FCA regulates the behaviours of financial services firms and protects consumers, and the PRA, the Bank of England PRA, regulates and supervises all of the major banks. So why do we need compliance? So enforcing compliance helps your company prevent and detect violations of rules, which protects your organisation from fines and lawsuits. It exists to promote and maintain an equilibrium in the financial sector. So what are the three lines of defence in compliance? So the first line of defence are the functions that own and manage risk. The second line of defence, functions that oversee or who specialise, for example, in compliance or management of the risk. And the third line of defence, functions that provide independent assurance. So the first line of defence can be relating to, for example, somebody working in customer service or a salesperson dealing directly with the client. The second line of defence will be those who manage the risk, such as the compliance department or function. And then the third line of defence will be like risk, as an example, within a business. So there's different lines of defence to combat different aspects of the system itself and the runnings. How compliance mitigates financial risks. So the compliance risk assessment will help the organisation understand the full range of its risk exposure, and compliance risks an organisation's potential exposure to legal penalties, financial forfeiture and material loss resulting from its failure to act in accordance with the industry laws and regulations. So an effectively designed compliance risk assessment also helps organisations to prioritise risks, map them to the applicable risk owners as well. So compliance screening techniques used to monitor relationships. A compliance department typically has 5 areas of responsibility. So I'll just read these out. They are identification, prevention, monitoring, detection, resolution, and advisory. So the organisation must take a collaborative approach to monitor compliance, as most individuals need guidance. Why do we need a compliance handbook? So a firm itself must establish, implement and maintain adequate policies, procedures and sufficient to ensure compliance of the firm, including its managers, employees and appointed representatives. The purpose of a compliance handbook is to ensure that all members of an organisation are following the same procedures. So what is an MLRO? Okay, so an MLRO, also known as a Money Laundering Reporting Officer, is tasked with overseeing a firm's compliance with the Financial Conduct Authority, who is a regulator in relation to rules on money laundering. Some refer to the MLRO as a nominated officer. So when a relevant firm appoints an individual to be an MLRO, it must choose someone who is employed within the relevant firm or with another relevant firm in the same group, whether as part of its governing body, management or staff. So an MLRO should be of sufficient seniority to make decisions on reporting which can impact a business and in relation to its clients, its exposure to criminal, civil, regulatory, disciplinary procedures. So last but not least, we'll wrap up with a summary. So what we've covered today: compliance monitors and reports on the effectiveness of controls in the management of organisations' risk exposure. The FCA and the PRA regulate financial services firms and banks in the UK. Enforcing compliance helps your company prevent and detect violations of rules, which protect your organisation from fines and lawsuits. There are 3 lines of defence in the compliance model designed to mitigate financial risks. The compliance risk assessment will help organisations understand the full range of its risk exposure. The organisation must take a collaborative approach to monitor compliance as most individuals need guidance. The purpose of a compliance handbook is to ensure that all members of an organisation follow the same procedures. And last but not least, an MLRO, also known as the Money Laundering Reporting Officer, has the task in which it's required to obviously deal with regulatory requirements, aspects of reporting, escalations to the National Crime Agency who deal with financial crime. Thank you for listening to the Compliance Channel UK Voiceover.